How you doing, everybody? Vasu Party here with the VPartySports Podcast for this Tuesday afternoon. What a day it will be in sports. We got a lot of college basketball to talk about, some NBA as well, too. We're going to get to all that, including the worldwide, world-famous Best Bets segment. The last few days have been a little rough, but documented. You can go back on my profile. You can go back on the Facebook page. Check out any of the previous broadcasts. I'm running about 68 to 67%. 67, 68, 69%, depending on your numbers, for the NFL in terms of selections. We are sponsored by the Brit Sports Pub and Patio in downtown San Jose. Come check us out every Sunday for the live podcast, but also during the week for happy hour specials, live music DJs, and everyday happy hour. You get all your NBA, your NHL, NCAA basketball and football, as well as the NFL on Sunday Ticket. You mentioned the podcast, receive 10% off your entire bill during NFL Sunday Ticket while we're there for the first hour, but all through the day for the NFL Sunday Ticket. Okay, here we go. Monday Night Football last night. Those of you that thought that the Eagles were going to cruise, I had said 2 days ago, and this is on me as well too, I had said 2 days ago that I thought it was going to be tough for Washington to keep up with Philadelphia and their offense. They had a 4-0 record at home. They're 4-0 on the road, 8-0 overall. 4-0 at home against the spread, an 11-point favorite for the Philadelphia Eagles. The total was 43.5. 32-21, the Washington Commanders upset the previously undefeated Philadelphia Eagles. Wow, what a game. Brian Robinson Jr., 86 yards rushing and a touchdown, but the 11-point underdog for Washington. They had played them tough. They didn't play them tough in the first game. It was 24-0 in Washington. They were able to get the 8 points back, but somehow, some way, Ron Rivera had them going last night. They are now 5-5 in the East. All four teams above 500 in the NFC East. As I look at it right now, the Washington Commanders are 5-5. By the way, I want to point out, somebody mentioned that I said Commodores the other day. That's the Vanderbilt Commodores. Washington Commanders are 5-5, now 3-2 on the road, 1-2 in the division. This was their first win in the division. Philadelphia now 8-1, 4-1 at home, 2-1 in the division, 5-1 in the conference. They're still leading the pack, but even though they're 8-0 and now 8-1, they have not run away with the race at all, because the New York Giants are 7-2. They got their win over Houston. Dallas lost in overtime to Green Bay. They're at 6-3. And how about Washington now at 5-5? You look at the playoff standings. I think all of them will make the playoffs. In the Philadelphia, New York, Dallas, and Washington are all make the top 8. We know there's only 7 goes. Washington a half a game back of San Francisco at 5-4. San Francisco in the 7th spot. Meanwhile, in the Western Conference, in the American Football Conference, I should say, Kansas City, Miami, Tennessee, Baltimore, the Jets, and Buffalo, New England, all 4 will make the playoffs. So both the Eastern divisions of both conferences are playing out well right now in terms of playoff scenarios. So 32-21, the final score. Let's get to some of the numbers of the game. I said Brian Robinson, 86 yards and a touchdown on 26 carries. Gibson had 44 yards. He got the other touchdown. McLaurin, 8 catches, 128 yards. Heineke, 211 yards throwing, averaging about 7.3 per attempt. He did throw the 1 interception. He did get sacked early in the game. That led to the early Philadelphia 7-0 lead. For the Eagles, Jalen Hurts, he got sacked 3 times in the game at Washington. He only got sacked once here, but 175 yards, 2 touchdowns, did throw that interception. Eagles only rushed for 94 yards, 54 by Sanders, 28 by Hurts, and then Gainwell and Scott finished it out. But Jalen Hurts, your second leading rusher. Watkins, 80 yards on 4 catches. Devontae Smith had 1 big catch for 15 yards, 6 catches and 39 yards. Goddard got the first touchdown for the Eagles after the fumble. He ended up going out late in the game, or middle of the game, with the injury. He might be gone for a few weeks. And then Devontae Smith got the other touchdown as well, too, when they were coming back to make it a close game and hopefully get the victory. But the Commanders come in 32-21, 11-point underdog. It goes over the total, 43.5. I think that last defensive touchdown by Washington, I guess if you're playing against the Washington fantasy football team, and if you're close, that touchdown by the defense probably hurts you from the standpoint of fantasy football. But I said over the weekend, and I made the mistake too, I ended up taking the Eagles at -11. But I said, watch out for the Commodores. They're playing the Commanders. Washington Commanders. They're playing very, very well. 11-point underdog. They come out and win outright. Kudos to Ron Rivera. Sending condolences to Ron Rivera on the loss of his mom. Last week it was very emotional in press conference, but very interesting how that game turned out. Philadelphia 8-1, only a game up on the Giants at 7-2. 6-3 for the Cowboys, 5-5 for Washington. All right, Week 11, and we'll get to that on the podcast on Thursday. Thursday Night Football, we'll start off Week 11 with Tennessee visiting Green Bay. The early line is Green Bay, -3. The total 41 is the over-under. Now, Green Bay came off the win in overtime over Dallas. Tennessee got their win over Denver last week, though, but Tennessee struggled offensively. See how this game goes. Packers -3 on the early line. All right, that wraps up football. Let's get to the NBA. Monday in the NBA, the Raptors with a 115-111 win over the Detroit Pistons. The Miami Heat, a 2-point favorite on the Suns, 113-112 over Phoenix. The Bucks lose only for the third time this year, but twice to the Hawks. They get dominated, 121-106. Golden State demolishes San Antonio, 132-95. They're 6-1 at home, still 0-7 on the road. The Celtics hold off the Thunder, 126-122. I did mention yesterday that the Thunder were hot. They beat the Knicks on Sunday. Thought it would be tough for them on a back-to-back game of the 12-point underdog. Boston is one of the best teams in the NBA, but they were able to garner a lead, a big-time lead over Boston. But the Celtics, the team that they are, they came back, able to get that victory, 126-122, but not the cover for Boston. Oklahoma City with the cover. Let's go to the NBA lines. We'll give them a real quick look here. 5 games on the board tonight. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 5 games on the board tonight. The New Orleans Pelicans are hosting the Memphis Grizzlies. Pelicans are 3.5 with the total being at 229. John Morant did not play on Sunday against Washington. Thus they lost. Jaren Jackson just found out Desmond Bane's going to be out for 2 to 3 weeks. Zion Williamson day to day. See how the records go for the spreads. We know that Memphis is 9-5 overall straight up, but they are 5-9 against the spread and 1-7 on the road versus the spread, but they're over under 7-7, while New Orleans 8-5. So 229 might be a good way to go there. Dallas, 7-point favorite over the Clippers. Clippers 8-6 overall, but 6-8 against the spread, and 4-3 on the road though. So Dallas has had a tough time in the last week covering games. They're 6-1 at home straight up, but they're 3-8 overall against the spread, and at home they're only 1-5-1 against the spread. So an interesting take there at 212 the total. Dallas 8-4 on the overs. Clippers are only 3-11 on the over-unders. So 212, kind of low the way the NBA is going right now, but it'll be interesting to see how the Clippers come out and play tonight versus the Mavericks. Utah 4.5, 232 versus the Knicks. Utah lost at Philadelphia a couple of days ago, 105-98. They lost on Sunday. They did lose 105-98 to the Sixers. 10-5, 5-0 at home, 5-5 on the road. 10-5 against the spread, 4-1 against the spread at home, and then 7-8 on the over-unders. And the New York Knicks are 8-5 on the over-unders. They've struggled this last week. That lost to Oklahoma City. They were favored against OKC early Sunday afternoon, noontime start there. The Knicks 6-7, 4-3 on the road, 2-4 away from Madison Square Garden, 5-7 and 1 versus the spread, 2-4 at home, and 3-3 on the road against the spread. Utah playing very well right now. The Knicks giving up a lot of points. I think I saw where they've given up 609 points in their last 5 games. Portland, an 8-point favorite over San Antonio. Portland, one of the surprise teams. They're going to get Lillard back, if not tonight, at some point this week. 9-4 overall, 3-2 at home, 6-2 on the road. They're very good on the road. They're 11-2 against the spread and 4-1 at home against the spread. The over-unders have not gone their way, 4-9 over and under. And San Antonio, 6-8 on the over and under. They got blown out by the Warriors last night. They're 6-8 overall record-wise, 3-3 on the road after that loss last night in Golden State. They got demolished. That game was over early. 8-6 against the spread and 3-3 against the spread on the road. So kind of an interesting team. It's kind of a surprise team with San Antonio right now. Popovich has them going a little bit. It's very interesting to see how they're maintaining. We'll get to the standings in a little bit. We'll go through all the injury reports for these games. Sacramento, 6-6 overall, 3-3 at home. They're 9-3 against the spread and 4-2 against the spread at home. They're a 1.5-point favorite against the Kevin Durant-led Brooklyn Nets coming in. Brooklyn beat up on the Clippers on Saturday afternoon, lost to the Lakers on Sunday, and now they're coming into Sacramento to play a team that plays pretty well at home. That fan base really good. The over-under 5-6-1 for Sacramento. The Brooklyn Nets over-under is 5-9, so 226.5 might be a way to go in terms of the under, but we'll see when we get to the best bet segment. Sacramento laying the 1.5. All right, we get to the injury reports now for these games. Let's get to it. We went through the Memphis and New Orleans injury report. By the way, Memphis in their last 5, they are 3-2. They lost to Washington, no Ja Morant. Beat up on Minnesota Friday night. Overtime win versus San Antonio, and then a loss to Boston where they covered, and then Washington where they beat them outright that day on the 6th of November. So 3-2 overall. Pelicans are 2-3. They got a 119-108 victory over Houston, but Houston right now. They lost at home to Portland, 106-95. Portland was a 9-point underdog as it turned out in that game. A lot of guys missing for Portland, but they came out with a win. Did Portland that day. New Orleans, and then a 115-111 over Chicago. 129-122 against Indiana, a loss. 124-121 in overtime. So as I do the calculations here, 106, 212, 323, 452, 576 points they've given up in their last 5 games have the Pelicans. So a very interesting scenario. 3-2 for the Grizzlies, 2-3 for the Pelicans in their last 5. Meanwhile, the Clippers and the Mavericks, injury report-wise, Davis Bertans, and Reggie Bullock might be out. Bertans for sure out. Bullock day-to-day. Kawhi Leonard out. John Wall day-to-day as well, too. The last 5 for the Clippers, they've gone 3-2. They had the win over Houston yesterday. Brooklyn, they lost on Saturday. The Lakers, they beat up. Lakers are terrible. They came back against Cleveland, a really good Cleveland team. And Utah, they lost at home versus Utah. Dallas, meanwhile, 3-2. They've had a rough week. This last week, they lost to Orlando. They lost to Washington, back-to-back games. Came back, did not cover against Portland on the 12th. So that's where they're at right now. And the Knicks and Jazz, as we said, the Knicks are 2-3 in their last 5. Utah, 3-2 in their last 5. 2 road losses against Philadelphia, 105-98 the other day, and then 121-112 to Washington. They are undefeated at home, 5-0. All right, now the Spurs and Trailblazers. Trailblazers playing well, 9-4 overall. And then the 6-8 Spurs come in after their game with Golden State last night. No Gary Payton, no Nurkic tonight. Winslow day-to-day. Keon Johnson there. Trey Jones, Branham, Majaki Branham, and Romeo Langford out for the Spurs. Bit players for them. San Antonio, only one of their last 5. The blowout last night encapsulated the start of the road trip. They beat up on Milwaukee, but Milwaukee did not have Giannis that game, and they are injury riddled right now. The Bucks, and we'll get to the Bucks in a second. As we said, they were injury riddled. The Hawks have beat them twice this year. Overtime loss to Memphis, loss to Denver, 2 losses to Denver in a row. Meanwhile, Portland 3-2, lost at Dallas but did cover. Beat up New Orleans, beat up Charlotte, beat up Miami on the road, and then lost to Phoenix at Phoenix after beating them the day before. And then finally, the Nets and Kings. The injury report here: T.J. Warren, Kyrie Irving. We know Kyrie Irving's story. T.J. Warren out for the Nets as well, too. Sacramento, 1.5-point favorite, 226.5 the total. Last 5 for the Nets, 3-2, the loss to the Lakers. But the Clippers and the Knicks were wins. The blowout win last Wednesday against the Knicks. Lost at Dallas, a close loss. And then at Charlotte, they won 98-94. Sacramento, 4 out of their last 5, including a 3-game winning streak. Good teams they beat in Cleveland and Golden State. Lakers in the middle of that. They did lose after a 12-point lead to Golden State at the Chase Center, but Golden State came back and won that. And then they had an overtime victory, a 3-point game-winning shot against Orlando in Orlando. So there you have it for the NBA. We gave you the NBA headlines. Let's go on to NCAA hoops right now. We got some top 25 teams to go at. Number 4, Kentucky, a 7-point favorite against Michigan State. Kentucky 2-0 to start the year. Michigan State had the game against Gonzaga last Friday night on the airship. They were able to make that close. They did have a lead going into that game, but they're 1-1. Gonzaga came back and won that game. This game's in Indianapolis. These are the Elite Eight teams. This is Dick Vitale's return back to broadcasting as well, too. He's going to do both games. Duke, 1.5-point favorite in the nightcap versus Kansas. Number 7, Duke, 1.5-point favorite. I think it's gone up to 2.5 in some cases. And Kansas, number 6, they're going to be without Bill Self on the sidelines for the first 4 games. Self-imposed suspension by Kansas University. Headline, the 8 top 25 matchups. We have UNC and Gardner-Webb, Auburn and Winthrop, San Diego State and Stanford, number 19, Alabama at South Alabama, and Dayton at UNLV. All right, college football, if it's Tuesday, it's MAC football. Toledo, a 17-point favorite against Bowling Green. They're coming off, they're leading their conference right now. If we go to the MAC standings here, Toledo at 5-1, lead the West Conference by 2 games over Ball State, who's 3-3. Eastern Michigan, Central Michigan also 3-3, but they're out of it as far as the West. Toledo pretty much wrapped up the West. Ohio, meanwhile, 5-1. They're a 3.5-point favorite at Ball State, 57 the total. They both lead at 5-1. They're a game better than Buffalo and a game better than Bowling Green. So a loss here by Ohio to Ball State could really hurt their chances in terms of Bowling Green. If they can come up with an upset victory at Toledo, then they'll be tied, and then all chaos will ensue in the MAC conference there. So 2 MAC games tonight. We'll have it for you tomorrow on the Daily Post. The other 3 MAC games, a lot of NBA, a lot of college football, a lot of college basketball, and some hockey as well, too. So NBA dominates tonight. The win last night for Washington against Philadelphia in the NFL. Thursday night football will have Green Bay and Tennessee. All right. Now, the world-famous, never duplicated best bet segment for today. We're going to start off with college basketball. Don't have any football for you today. That conference just a little too much for me right now. But in the best bet segment for basketball, college basketball, I'm going to take Kentucky. They are number 1 in the KenPom ratings. Defensively, their net difference is plus 29. They're laying 7 to Michigan State. If Michigan State can dribble the ball, can handle the ball a little bit better, then they might be able to contend with Kentucky as a 7-point underdog. If they can't, and Kentucky gets off to a good start, and Michigan State gets rattled, it's going to be 40 minutes of hell for Kentucky in that press. And Oscar Schwebe, preseason player of the year, he's going to play tonight for Kentucky. He's back. So a 7-point favorite for Kentucky is what I'm taking. Duke, that line did go up to 2.5. They're going to play against Kansas. John Shire in his second game coaching with the Duke Blue Devils after the retirement of Coach Krzyzewski. 2.5-point favorite, the game on a neutral site in Indianapolis. They will follow the Kentucky-Michigan State game. Duke over Kansas minus 2.5. By the way, in the break between the 2 games, the BCS standings will come out as well, too. They're live in Indianapolis, and they're going to do the top 10, top 25 BCS standings for this week in between games. So Kentucky starts at 7 o'clock. Duke will go about 9:30, and in between the BCS rankings. Kentucky minus 7, Duke minus 2.5. A matchup of the Atlantic 10 and the American Conference, the Memphis Tigers behind Penny Hardaway, 2.5-point underdog to the St. Louis Billikens. I'm going with Memphis. I know it's a little too early to talk about a lot of college basketball, but I like this Memphis team. I like the way Anthony Hardaway has got them going to start. They've already played their 1 game. They had a blowout in their first game against Vanderbilt. And then Stanford going up at home on the farm against the number 17 San Diego State Aztecs. San Diego State defensively very good, but they're going to go into Stanford. Stanford had a tough loss against Wisconsin. They played on a baseball field there. Let me go through this a little bit because this is a fascinating game. ESPN has them at 60% to win for San Diego State. The total is 139.5. San Diego State's only given up 66 points. Stanford has scored 69, but they've given up 69 points as well, too. And San Diego State on a 2-game winning streak. They beat BYU. They beat Cal State Fullerton to open up the season. Stanford in the last 5, they lost to Wisconsin. They beat up on Pacific, did not cover on that game. So they're 1-1, but Wisconsin's a quality team for Stanford. But I got to think that Stanford crowd on the farm a Tuesday night to see a top-ranked, top 25 team in San Diego State. That's going to be a good play. All right, now to the NBA. Pelicans and Memphis, we said they hadn't gone over very much in these last few games. Memphis 7-6 on the over. New Orleans 8-4 on the over. the last 5 games they hadn't gone over very much, but I'm taking the over 229. The Pelicans and the Grizzlies over 229, full complement of players there tonight. Utah has not been beaten at home. They're 5-0. They came off a tough loss against the 76ers. All their losses are on the road. They're 4-1 against the spread. At home, 4.5 against the Knicks, who are struggling. The Utah Jazz minus 4.5. The Brooklyn Nets, Sacramento Kings. We know both those teams don't go over a lot, but these two offenses can go, and they've shown that they can score. Brooklyn doesn't play any defense. Sacramento can't defend Kevin Durant, especially if he's down in the post. They both like to run over 226.5 in this over for Brooklyn and Sacramento. Portland Trailblazers, still a surprise, 8-point favorites over the who are they playing here? They're playing the San Antonio Spurs. San Antonio came off the game last night again with Golden State getting blown out, 9-point underdog. They got blown out. They're only 1 out of the last 5, and that was against the depleted Milwaukee Bucks team. Check the login to see if check the injury reports to see what the status is for Lillard. But I like Portland at -8. They're second right now in the Western Conference, and they've surprised everybody. Them and Utah, the Trailblazers and the Utah Jazz have surprised everybody in the Western Conference to this point. Phoenix right there as well too. They did not beat Miami. No Chris Paul yesterday, but they did cover the 2 points. One of the picks that we had. All right, best bets again: Kentucky 7, Duke -2.5, Memphis +2.5, Stanford +5.5 on the college games. The NBA games: Memphis and New Orleans over 229, Utah -4.5, Brooklyn, Sacramento over 226.5, and then Portland, the Trailblazers -8 over San Antonio. Before we get out of here, let's check Facebook here a little bit, see what we got going on. Hi, David Andrews. Great show, Vasu. Good to see you, David. It's been a while since we've seen you. Margie Brown, awesome show. VV, appreciate you both for tuning in. Love to hear more comments. You can find me on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter to catch the show as much as possible. As we said, we appreciate all the support we get. Don't forget, every Sunday, 9:30 Pacific time, we'll be at the Brit Sports Pub and Patio, downtown San Jose. Join us live, mention the podcast to receive 10% off your entire bill. We'll have all the Week 11 Sunday ticket action for you. Mention that during Sunday ticket hours, you get 10% off your entire bill, including alcohol. The VParty Sports Podcast will be back with you tomorrow for the Daily Post, another 20-minute segment. And then Thursday, we'll have a full show. Friday, we'll have an interview with former Chicago Bears great and Ohio State great, 2 of my favorite topics to talk about. Doug Plank will join me live at 1 o'clock Pacific time, 4 o'clock on the East, 3 o'clock in the Central Time Zone for you Chicago Bears fans. And then we'll replay it again, 6 o'clock on the East Coast, 3 o'clock on the West. Don't forget to check out the Brit Sports Pub and Patio, downtown San Jose, for all your NBA, NCAA, NHL, college football, college basketball, and the happy hour as well, too. All right, I'm your host, Vasi Vadaparty. Thank you all very much for being with us, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Please download this anytime. Get those best bet segments. Let's get some winners out there, and let's go after this as well, too. All right, that's going to do it for today. Thank you again to everybody. The VParty Sports Podcast, Vasi Vadaparty. Take care. Good luck with your games. Good luck with your fantasy sports. We will talk to you tomorrow, 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific for the Daily Post podcast. Take care.